So we're going to go ahead and get started with our Food for Thought DEI speaker series for this evening. Just a couple of housekeeping reminders. This is a 20-minute TED Talk style presentation, so there won't be any time for questions, but our speakers do generally provide contact information. So if you have questions or follow up, you should feel free to contact them that way. I will start a timer and let the speaker know when they have 5 minutes remaining. So our speaker this evening is Atiya Wells. Atiya Wells is the founder and executive director of Backyard Basecamp, Inc., a nonprofit with a mission to reconnect Black, Indigenous, and people of color to land and nature. By diving into research and history, Atiya learned that historical trauma is a key player in the lack of diversity in environmental programming. She has since dedicated her time to reintroducing her community to nature by starting in their own backyards and eventually embarking on a journey into the many wild spaces across Baltimore. Atiya?
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I hope you are having a great day. This week has been difficult for me as well as last week with recent events, and I always find it strange to keep powering through productivity when the world is falling apart. So with that being said, I was asked to come and talk about our diversity, equity, and inclusion work, which is really interesting to me because I don't think we have ever framed it as diversity, equity, and inclusion work. What we do is essentially community work. Our organization is predominantly Black, and so is our community. And so that is just the space where we find ourselves. And it has been, I believe, it's been an intentional building to create a safe space for the people of color in our neighborhood to have green space and just a space to come and hang out and to learn about, you know, our historical connections to nature in a way that is not so, that's more organic and not so lecture heavy. And having said that, I'm finna give you a lecture. So I'm going to, where's my presentation button? There we go. Okay, so the way that I have usually set up all of our talks is through an album. And so we tell our story in these 6 different sections. And so I'm going to get into each one of those now. So the founding of Backyard Basecamp happened in 2019, the founding of the nonprofit Backyard Basecamp. We initially started as an LLC because I thought that I would do professional development for teachers and educate them on how to bring environmental education into their classrooms or infuse nature into the curriculum that they were already teaching. So one of my programs was a kindergarten class, and I would just ask the teacher, you know, like, what are your goals for this year? Like, what do you want the kids to know? And if they're on the letter K and they're doing a number 5, we would just take the kids outside, count, go find 5 things, go collect 5 things. We'll make little letter Ks out of sticks and branches of pine cones, whatever we find, just really simplifying environmental education. And I will start with, like, I was not a nature person. I didn't go on my first hike until I was 22. But after that, I had the sort of transformational experience being in the woods. I actually thought my now husband was actually dropping me off in the woods to either murder me or kill me or just like leave me in the woods and have me fend for myself. But like I said, I had a really transformational experience in the forest, and I just wanted more of it, and I wanted to share that experience with more people. I wanted to highlight, you know, how I felt to other people. And I was also, when I had my son who's 5 now, I went through postpartum depression, and I found a lot of healing just by spending time outside. And so I wanted to bring people on that journey with me. And so I started a couple of programs in Baltimore City, which is where we're based, and we would lead these preschool kids and their families outside. And after a couple of weeks, they all started asking me questions about, like, what plant this was, what tree that was, if we could eat this, if there's snakes or bears in the woods. And I had no idea. And I felt like if I was going to be leading people outside, I should probably know a little bit about what the hazards are. And I should also probably know what poison ivy actually looks like. And so I started signing up for a lot of classes on nature education and environmental education. And throughout each workshop, I would always like count how many Black people or how many people of color were in the room. And it was always like I could count on one hand. And I just wanted to know like where my people were at and why that was so. And so I think about the same year the book Farming While Black came out. And through that, I learned about generational trauma and ancestral wounding. And just through the stories that our ancestors have told us, or just the experiences that my parents and grandparents have gone through that they've told me, we've sort of associated nature with danger. And, you know, we don't want to be out there because bad things happen to us in the woods, from enslavement to Jim Crow to, you know, going through the Underground Railroad and being hunted and mauled. And so we've sort of, like I said, associated nature with danger. But on the flip side of that, Black people were a land-based people, and we have always, actually not only Black people, but pretty much everybody before colonization were land-based people, and they were nature-based people. But through the searching for civilization and to call oneself civilized, we have really broken away from nature and we've severed that part of ourselves. And so we just want to create the space for people to remember that and to reconnect themselves to that. So I'm in a meeting. Okay, sorry, my son just tripped. And so we're going to talk about finding how I found the space that we now call Bliss Meadows, which is a 10-acre land reclamation project here in Baltimore City, which is around the corner from my home. Because one of the things that I wanted to do is this self-paced naturalist course where you had to find nature close to your home. And I was like, I live on Moravia Road in Baltimore City. It looks like the busiest street in Baltimore. Like there ain't gonna be no nature around here. But I ended up pulling my house up on Google Maps. And I found this park around the corner from my house. And I was like, we don't have any parks in this neighborhood. Like this has to be a mistake. And Google has made a mistake. And I'm going to tell them that they made a mistake because I bet you it's houses around here. And so I walked around the corner and I found like woods, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And what I'm showing you here is just a map of Baltimore City to really look at where green space exists and where it does not. If any of you have been to Baltimore or you know anything about Baltimore, people call it the tale of two cities. There's the white L and the black butterfly. And historically, most of the larger green spaces exist within the white L, aside from Lincoln Park, which is on the far west side of Baltimore. It's the city park, but it's kind of on the county line. So there's like this, is it a city park? Is it a county park? Nobody really knows, but it does fall under Baltimore City's purview. And where I am over here in the Northeast, which is this upper right corner of the Baltimore City Recreation and Parks map, you can see there's pretty much nothing here aside from Herring Run Park, which kind of goes down the furthest corner of Northeast Baltimore. But on the right side of Herring Run Park, there is like little pocket parks, which are mostly ball fields. And so that's what I thought I would find was a ball field, but I found woods, or like, as we like to call them, hood woods. And we also found this pond. And I was like, okay, this is amazing. Did I like fall and bump my head and I've entered Wonderland or Narnia? And I wanted to sort of steward this land to become a space for education and healing for our community, to have something that was not just a ball field, to connect with a place that was wild or natural. And so we started working with landscape architects and engineers to develop the site. And so we have the 10-acre parcel that we have is actually made up of 3 different parcels. So area 1 is the city park, which is about 7 acres. It was an abandoned park. There had been no work. No work has ever been done in this park. I think it became a park in 1978. Somebody was going to build houses in the space, but the topography is very strange. And so they were advised to just donate the land to the city. and then it became a park that nobody has ever taken care of until about 4 to 5 years ago when we started. Area number 2 is a 2.5-acre lot that was also previously vacant and abandoned that we took over. We now own that lot. It was donated to us last September. And then area number 3 is a formerly vacant house that we are working on turning into a community center. And in space number 2, which is the farm, we have the space that we grow vegetables. We have an orchard. We have chickens. We have goats. We have sheep. We keep bees. And we run educational programming on how to be self-sustainable and how you can do these things living inside of Baltimore City. So, you know, you can have chickens in the city, you can have goats in the city, you just have to pay for your permit, fill out the paperwork, make sure all your stuff is in order. And you can do these things. And you can have, people say free eggs, but they ain't free because chickens cost a lot of money. And some things that we do are not even about environmental education. It's mostly just about getting people outside. So we've been running an after-school chess club, which people love. They love coming to the farm and they love playing chess now, the kids do. And we've done bird banding workshops. We've done, what else have we done? We did a sheep sharing. We shared our sheep, and we also taught people how to spin wool into yarn and also how to dye wool with plants that we grow on the farm. So we grow indigo, marigolds, and cosmos for dye plants. We're also expanding our growing operation to include edible medicinal culinary herbs and a cut flower operation. And this is a pretty little design of what we envisioned the space to look like about 3 years ago. We did some community design charrettes. And so we invited members of our community to come out and envision with us like what this space could be and what we could use it for. And so this is the entire footprint of it on the left, and then on the right is what everyone said their ideas were. So they wanted raised planter beds, they wanted an orchard, they wanted a space to have events, they wanted we were talking about like stormwater mitigation with the stormwater treatment train on the right, like down towards the bottom of it. And then the greenhouses up front. And also there's a space, you can't really see the labels, but there's a space for all of our animals and the bees, and making sure that we had, oh my gosh, making sure that we had shade up because we don't have a lot of shade on site, which makes for a really nice farm, not so much community hangout space. It gets really hot in summer. And we also run a summer camp as well. And so we have to make sure that we have shade so the kids don't overheat. The forest provides great shade though. And so what I also always like to remind people of is that they have to remember that this space was vacant for at least 10 years. And so this has been a space that our community has typically avoided. But over the 3 to 4 years that we've been working on it, it's a place that they have come to just like they like seeing all the changes. Like somebody's always commenting like, you did so much in like a month, I just came here and I didn't see all this. Or we have a neighbor across the street, we call him our head of security, and he does his morning walks. He was like, all right, I'm going to make my rounds. So he just watches, he watches the site, make sure everything's in order. He makes sure the kids don't break stuff. So it has really become a community gym. We do a lot of community engagement with the people who live around the site. We do that usually in the fall and winter, get their ideas. So what kind of programs they want us to run for the following spring and summer season. And what we found through doing community engagement is that like a lot of people just want their kids to learn what used to be home economics in school. So they want them to learn like financial literacy, how to balance a budget, how to write checks, how to even like fill out an envelope, because nobody does that anymore, and you know, how to cook. And so we've used this space and our community's ideas and our ideas and meshed them together to create or co-create, you know, what we envision all of this happening. And we just believe that it's not enough to just like mow a vacant lot and put some benches on it, call it a park, and then, like people feel like something was done. Like you really have to engage with folks and invite them in and, offer programs that are interesting and exciting. So not only do we grow food, we teach our community how to grow food. We teach them how to harvest it. And then we also teach them that component of cooking and nutritional education. So I am a pediatric nurse by trade. I don't think I mentioned that yet. And one thing that I noticed just being in the hospital environment is that I've taken care of a lot of kids who spend their entire lives inside of a hospital room. And so when I started having kids, this is my daughter, by the way, she's 9 now. I really wanted them to go outside and like get fresh air as much as possible. Again, I did not consider myself a nature person or nature connected. I was a street kid. We ran the streets all day until the street lights came on. But like we weren't like climbing trees or jumping in creeks or like swinging off cliffs or things like that. Like we were, high-fiving stop signs and shimmying up light poles and like riding bikes in the projects parking lots. Or I like to say we were doing parkour in the projects before it became a thing. And so we feel like the need for urban environmental education is so rich, especially in a city like Baltimore, where there is not so much, there's like enough greenery for kids to really experience nature here, rather than, taking them out to surrounding counties to get that feel for wilderness, and then you bring them back to the city and all you really do is just reinforce that like there's nothing good in Baltimore and people just can't wait to get out of here. I'm originally from Newark, New Jersey, and that is how environmental education was taught to us. And so like my father always says I was on the first thing smoking out of Newark, because I was like, yeah, there's nothing good here. And then now that I'm older and a little bit wiser, some of the things that I've read about Jersey, I was like, oh my gosh, that's in Jersey? That's in Jersey? So like, had I known all these things, or had I been exposed to all these things that were literally right in our backyard, I might not have wanted to venture too much further. And I probably would have also wanted to make sure that, I invested more in my community and in my friends and things like that. But again, as soon as I got my diploma, I left. Oh no, what did I do? Why aren't you moving? There we go. And so one of the things that we really talk about is topophilia, which is the idea that humans generally have a bias to their local ecology. So like we're more inclined to be in a relationship with an oak tree than we are to be a redwood, unless you're originally from California. So like we bond better with natural elements that exist in our local ecosystem, because that's what we see all the time. That's what we know all the time. And so we really just, like I said, want to reconnect people to start looking at the trees that make up the forest, and start looking at, the weeds or the flowers that are growing through the sidewalks, and understanding them, and learning why they are there and how they thrive without any love, care, or attention. And so oh my gosh. I mentioned we do community engagement. And so this is one of the surveys that we did 2 years ago, where we literally knocked on the doors of people who live around the farm. And we asked them all of these questions. We said, how many years have you lived here? Do you have kids? What grades are they in? So that as we're shaping programs, we make sure that they are age appropriate. And we learned that there are a lot of pre-K students in our area. And so most of our programming is catered to younger kids. We do have a gap in like middle and high school, and then it picks back up in like the low 20s. And so mostly everything we do is either geared for preschool age kids, or like older youth, or young families. And then we also asked about their interest in nature-based experiences, if they've noticed anything in their kids that would make them more inclined to want to come to the farm or hang out with us. And we learned that like a lot of kids, like any kids, are into like bugs and moths and
We're at 5 minutes.
Oh my goodness. And like insects and things like that. And so I think with kids, like they need an adult to really like hone in on those things, to really like, oh yeah, that's cool, you found these things. Like my daughter, she was really into worms for a long time. Like she had so many pet worms that she named Louie. And so when you have an adult to kind of reinforce those things, you're like, oh, this is cool, this is something that I can do when I grow up. And we know that the environmental field is not very racially diverse. And so it all stems from youth, where like you're able to touch and feel things in nature without an adult saying, don't touch that, get away from that, and like reinstilling their fears in you. And so our programs exist in like 5 pillars. We call them pillars. They're more interwoven like a basket. And so we focus on animal husbandry, environmental education, conservation, community green space, and food access. And interwoven in that is environmental justice and cultural relevancy. And what I mean by that is that we honor stories, and we tell a lot of stories of Black people and their relationship to nature. We will hold rap ciphers when the kids are here, because there's always one kid who thinks they're a rapper. And so we let them get that out. We let our kids, handle our chickens, not right now, but because the avian flu has this outbreak. And so we have cordoned off the chickens from everybody. But this is my son, Kai, and he's holding one of our chickens, Angel, who's a silky. And so we showcase, the different types of chickens that you can have, the different types of eggs they lay, the different types of colors they are. And these are things that people, especially in the city, just don't get. This is community green space. So this is our pond, one of our ponds, the peace pond that I showed you before. We did another community design charrette to design what the pond enhancement would look like. And so all of these elements is what our community has said that they wanted at that pond, which is an ancestral stone, a lot of foliage, some trees to block off one of the neighbors' houses, and some low-growing plants and flowering plants. And everybody wanted purple flowers, so we have a lot of catmint growing. And for conservation, we have 10 acres of land. And so we are always planting something, planting native plants, removing invasives. And this is some of the kids in the neighborhood. They came to help us reseed the meadow, and they are just having the times of their lives, just reseeding and spreading straw. And we do environmental education again, and we also interweave justice in that. From the littlest kid to the biggest kid, we just really teach them observation skills and awareness. Like, when you're traveling down this street, tell me what you see. When you go down this street, tell me, what do you see? What are you noticing? What's the same? What's different? And it's really interesting to see kids, already having an understanding that like certain neighborhoods look better than others. Or certain neighborhoods look better than theirs. Certain neighborhoods have more trees or more trash than theirs. And then we start to brainstorm about why that is so, and also how we can build solutions to those. And then food access. So as I mentioned, we grow food. We have a large vegetable plot that we grow. We have to fence it in because we have a lot of deer pressure. We also have a lot of weed pressure. And so we teach kids, like, they're planting seeds and they're transplanting things in the ground. They help us harvest, especially the potatoes. They love harvesting potatoes. It's like digging for potatoes and finding worms is like the highlight of the summer. We give away food. We do food distribution every Saturday. And we also add in recipes to that for things that people just don't know what's in the box, like what's a zucchini, how do you make a zucchini, how do you cook okra, how do you eat these mushrooms, like what am I supposed to make with this? And so we do like a lot of education around that as well. And then we are manifesting dreams as far as like what the future can look like for us in our space. We're only about 2 to 3 years into this work. We have a long way to go, hopefully. But I think we've done a lot in a short amount of time. And we are hopeful that our work will continue, and we continue to make a difference in the lives of our community, providing them with food and green space and education and fun for the youth.
Thank you so much, Atiya. I know you started by saying that it was weird to be doing things when the world feels like it's falling apart, but hearing that was exactly what I needed. I don't know about anybody else, but thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I'm going to put my contact information in the chat box for folks who have questions or want to link or want to come by for a little tour.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and turn the recording off.